Welcome to Eventful Endeavors, secrets to crafting the perfect celebration. If you're planning an event and looking for useful tips from industry experts, you're in the right place. So get ready to take some notes and we'll dive right in. This is Eventful Endeavors.
All right, hey everybody, welcome to another episode. I'm sitting here today with Mia Silvertooth of the Taylor Stone, which is a beautiful, historic, sort of family-owned, or is it family-owned? I don't know if it's
It is,
family-owned. Maybe
yes,
I'm making
it
that
is.
part up. But
No, that's fine.
okay, great, yeah. So it's the Taylor Stone, beautiful, historic, kind of focuses on small, intimate weddings. But it's a beautiful venue in Lewisville, Texas, which is near Dallas, the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So hey, Mia, glad you're here. We're all about supporting each other and kind of working together and coming together.
Yeah, hello.
So
I'm
thanks for
excited
being
to
here.
be here. Yeah, of course. I'm super excited to talk about it. It is family owned. It was built in 1901, so it's a historic little space. We're focused on micro weddings and micro events, small rehearsal dinners, bridal showers, little micro weddings, all of that stuff.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah. Micro weddings is something maybe people don't hear a whole lot about. So we'll have to get into that for sure.
Definitely.
So tell us about you first, though. So you spent a lot of time as a wedding photographer first, and you kind of
Yes.
noticed something was missing. So tell us
Yes.
about how you got
So
started.
I have been a wedding photographer for 9 years this year. I'm still a wedding photographer and videographer. I noticed that there was kind of a gap in the market as I had a client that had a 60 guest count at a venue that basically fit around 350 people. So, and I asked them, I'm like, what caused you guys to want to book this large of a venue? And they were like, you know what? In our budget, there really wasn't anything for the price range we were wanting to stay at, even though we had a small guest count. So this was like the best bet. And I saw a lot of couples, instead of spending their money towards, decor or like special things or special add-on vendors that they might like to have, a lot of their budget was going towards the venue instead, even though they were having a smaller guest count. And being in the wedding industry, I already loved what I did so much, and I wanted a space where I could create my own, wedding photography in and kind of offer something all-inclusive, as well as offer couples that had a budget for a really beautiful, intimate wedding, but that just wanted something that is smaller to make it feel more intimate inside. So, yeah, that's how it was created.
Gotcha.
And I love shooting weddings. I can't imagine doing anything else. And so I've kind of aimed my space towards only weddings. But we'll get the occasional small party or rehearsal dinner and things too. But yeah, it's been a hit with micro weddings, I guess, is the term that came about the past few years.
Yeah. So how exactly what size is the venue? Like how small or
So
intimate are we talking here?
it's about 980 square feet. It has a little room that is for, I would say, like a buffet getting ready area. Usually I'll have couples have that as like the buffet space where they'll have their catering set up in that little back room. It has a restroom, and then it has the rest of it is just an open floor plan. It's like a little square. And then from the outside, it doesn't look like much. It's kind of hidden, tucked behind some trees. It's within an area that's like a little, it's called Old Town Lewisville. So it's like an old area of Lewisville. It was the first little city developed over here in the early 1900s. And so it was originally a bookbinding store. So like, think of like an original brick and mortar little literal brick building. And then it's been used over the years for a few different things. Like, they've never done with it what it could be used for. It's absolutely beautiful in there. And so the second I saw it, I was like, I've got to have this space. And the city had no idea what I was doing. When I was talking to the owner of the building, I was like, yeah, I want to make it an event space. And they were like, in this little room, like, are you sure? And then we made some changes in there. And yeah, now it's awesome. So
Yeah, I'm looking at pictures of it. It does definitely have a historic look, as very much so with the exposed mortar I can see now.
yeah,
That's awesome. So
a lot
micro
of couples
weddings,
say
that's the
they
thing that probably people.
what is it?
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that a lot of people say, I've never been to Louisiana, but a lot of folks have said that it looks like wedding venues that are in Louisiana. So that's kind of cool because it's kind of,
Okay.
like the bricks are exposed and it's kind of like that fall apart look in there. So
Yeah, it almost reminds me of like like an old building you'd see in like the French Quarter or downtown or something like that.
yeah.
Okay. So micro weddings are something that I think probably a lot of couples don't even know what that is, or that that's an option. So can you kind of describe a little bit about what makes a micro wedding a micro wedding? What are some of the benefits of having a micro wedding for people that might be interested if they're overwhelmed by the large venues and the large productions and they don't need all that, but sometimes they feel like that's all that's out there. So tell us about kind of what that means.
Of course. Yeah. So micro weddings is basically 50 and under guest count. You can even say 100 folks and under, we could be considered a micro wedding. And a lot of venues actually will create custom packages because we actually love those kind of weddings because they are so much more intimate. And the couples that those kind of weddings bring, we love because they are kind of intentional with their wedding planning. You know, your guest count's smaller, so you're more intentional about who's coming, what kind of decor you have. You're a lot more creative with it. And so at least that's my experience of the kind of couples that I've had having the venue now. But it's basically just having a really sweet, intimate wedding on a smaller scale. And just because it's smaller doesn't mean that it has to be less luxurious or less, extravagant. You can still have, like, I'll get some couples, and I have such a wide range. I'll have some couples that say, we have a 10-person guest count. We just want to come in, get married, take some photos and leave. And then I have some couples that are like, okay, I'm bringing in this catering team. We're bringing in all our own tables and chairs. We're making it like over the top because they still have a budget for a larger wedding, but they only want to invite, 20 to 50 folks. And so they can really transform a space when you find a great micro wedding venue, because you can, do a lot more with your budget, decor wise, and music and catering and stationery, all of those things, and your photographer and videographer team. You can create a lot more when you have less money spent on the venue. So it's been a hit since COVID, I would say. Since then, couples have been deciding to go smaller.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I think that that's a resource a lot of people probably don't realize is out there. So that's a very powerful thing for sure. So what is your favorite feature of the Taylor Stone? I mean, you described a lot of different things about it, but if you had to pick one sort of notable feature that is your favorite, what would you say it is?
So my favorite feature is in the evening, we do have string lights covering the ceiling. And in the evening time, myself or whatever photographer my couple has hired is able to go outside, and the windows are completely transparent, so you can see everybody through the windows. So it's kind of a cool take of being able to grasp the entire feel of the evening through the windows. So it's one of my favorite features. We have a chandelier inside, so a lot of the times my couple do their last private dance, they'll be dancing underneath the chandelier, and I like to go outside and capture that through the window. So it's kind of like it encompasses the whole feeling of the night.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Yeah, that's very quintessential, but like in a good way, in sort of a beautiful frozen moment way. I can picture that for sure.
Definitely.
Okay, cool. So let's talk a little bit about kind of your experience like in the industry. So how long have you been doing this with the Taylor Stone? I know you've been in the wedding industry for a while as a photographer, but how long have you guys been open and doing your venue stuff over at the Taylor Stone?
So we've been open for 1 year this month.
Okay, cool. So this is a fairly new project that you've kind of embarked on.
Definitely. I was saving, and I'm a very go all in kind of person with anything business oriented. So I had been seeing this space for a very long time. And the second it was on the market, I just had to get it because I would I would go by, and it's not too far from my house. I would go by and I would look through the window like creeper, because I would see it over here, and I loved it so much. And it was almost just like fate that it worked out the way it did, because I was too scared to jump into something too large as my first time having a venue.
Sure.
And so it was the perfect space to kind of create. And every time I go in there, it's like I don't want to leave, no matter what we're doing in there, what type of wedding or meeting or anything. It's such a great feeling, and I don't ever want to leave the space. So
yeah, well, sometimes the universe just speaks to you and you got to kind of jump on it, so
yes,
glad
seriously.
You took that leap.
Definitely.
Okay, so now that you've already been in the wedding industry for a while, but now you're in the event sort of side of things too. So what are some current trends that you're seeing in the wedding event industry in your area? I know you specialize in micro weddings and smaller events, but what have you seen that's changed maybe versus when you were a photographer in years past, or when you first started the venue to today? What changes and trends are you seeing?
So trends wise, on a large scale for larger weddings or my smaller weddings, I would say intentional details. Definitely like the documentary style, having less emphasis on, I guess, the posed moments of the day, and rather the guest experience. So, I've noticed couples hiring vendors that are really unique, something different. Everyone's trying to do something new and innovative, rather than the same old traditional wedding. And a lot of that is with, I wouldn't say as much catering, catering standard, everyone just wants to eat something good and yummy and buffet wise, but like color trends and
sure,
like the style of things. I feel like no weddings I'm shooting or hosting are the same. Like every single wedding is a little bit different and unique in its own way, and I think that's a lot of tell of how couples are just wanting really to create something that's very them, and documenting it that way as well. Like they're not as big and worried about the perfect moment, rather capturing it how it really felt. And that's really translating in details and the venues that my couples are booking and the clients, and also like the client relationships. I feel like all the vendors that I'm working with all really get to know their couples, which is kind of a newer thing. Like I feel like years ago, couples were just hiring me and I would never have contact with them prior to wedding day. They would just book me and I'm just a worker basically. And then now it's couples are like, hey, we want you to come to our rehearsal dinner, even if it's at the space. They're like, we want you to be there and hang out with us, not to work, but like to get to know us and be more involved. And I feel like that's kind of the turn that they've taken with a lot of their vendors. Like the vendor teams I'm meeting on wedding days are like, hey, we've all met this couple a few times. We've all hung out together already. And it's much more involved in the industry now than it used to be, I feel like.
Yeah, I would agree with you for sure. We tend to see, and that's the answer I get a lot of the times, is basically a deviation from non-traditional sort of traditions, different things that you see for standard of weddings for decades. And being a dueling pianos company, with people that hire us for entertainment, and we almost always are involved with one of those because they're already trying to go out of the box with entertainment. So, I would agree for sure. We see that same trend, and I've seen all kinds of interesting stuff. I saw I had a bunch of people come out, like the groom party disappeared, and then everybody came back out dressed in like Yoshi suits. That was a really weird one. I saw like robot disco ball dancer people on stilts at a wedding last week that I did.
Amazing. Oh my gosh.
It's
I bet that was so unique. Sure. When you're performing, because I've never seen dueling pianos in real life. I've only seen videos and things. But I've heard that it's like such a big energy. Do you feel that way? Do you feel like what you're doing is it a lot of energy that you're having to give? Is it something that only works better with larger crowds, or can smaller scale events hire you guys as well?
Yeah, no, it can be across the board. And it really is a large spectrum. And the dueling piano players are sort of trained to fill the vessel or the room that they're put into. So small intimate settings can go over very, very well. Huge weddings with lots of energy to push, and a lot of dancing can go very well as well. And it's all about crowd interaction. So it's designed to get people dancing and participating and coming up, and you're part of the show. It's not just watching a band perform.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun for sure. If you haven't checked it out, you should definitely go check it out.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so real quick question: do you just do your venue only, or do you do photography as well still too? Is that only at your venue? Do you do photography at other venues on top of it? Do you have planning services at the venue? How does all that kind of work together?
Yes, so I am a photographer outside of the space. I travel all over Texas. We just had a wedding in California this last weekend, which I won't be traveling that far again. So definitely within Texas, we'll be staying to shoot. But I shoot photo and video, and I have a team that comes with me as well. And then same thing for the venue. I have a handful of coordinators that I love and trust that will come in, because we try to be as all inclusive as possible. So, and especially style wise, like that was very important for me, is I don't ever want to steer a client in the direction of other vendors and them not be the same quality that I would produce. So if I'm unavailable, then I have a handful of photographers and videographers that I love to send their way, depending on what kind of style they're wanting. And then same thing with coordinating as well. So we have in-house coordinating and floral. So floral is through my family. So we are family owned and operated. Sorry, I don't know what that is. So we're family owned and operated. And so my family does do all the floral, and then I have coordinators and other photographers and videographers who come as well.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's a powerful thing too. I think that comes with the network sort of trusted people and couples trusting their vendors and knowing them. That goes along with vendors knowing vendors and working together and trusting each other.
Definitely.
Which is kind of what we're trying to do with all this outreach stuff, kind of build that network. Okay, great. So let's kind of move along here a little bit. So what are some things that couples should never do? Some cringeworthy things that you hate seeing at your events, whether the ones you're doing photography at other venues or your venue in particular. Tell me some horror stories. What do you got?
Oh my gosh, cringe things. I've had so many cringe things happening. I feel like I'm going to get in trouble for this. Oh, I think the most cringe thing for me,
you don't have to drop any names, of course.
I know. This is just like a personal preference, but when couples say super cheesy inside jokes in their vows, I know as a wedding vendor, we're always like, oh God, it's cringe to us, like especially going back to edit films or like later on the night. It's okay. This part's a little cringe, but it's something that I also love. I love when I'm videoing a wedding and I go back and at the end of the night, I'll usually ask them at the wedding party, like after they've drank a little bit, I'll ask them some questions about the couple. And sometimes I'll make my couples like a little bit of a short, extra little film of just like crazy cringe things they've said. It's usually not appropriate enough to put in their actual wedding film. So I love to add that in usually. I've had horror stories wise. A few weeks ago, I had a groom walk down the aisle and say he could not get married. And so we just continued on the night and had dinner with the bride and everything.
Oh, no.
So yeah, that's the craziest story that I have. Because that hasn't ever happened to me.
That's
so
movie
that was
quality right there.
It was. I was like, I don't know. And so yeah, I'll never post it or anything, but I definitely have that for myself. That goes in my back pocket as the craziest thing that's ever happened during a wedding.
Yeah, that's a good story for sure.
Yes.
Okay, so what about on the flip side of that? What is the most fun or unique idea you've seen at a recent wedding or event that you've either attended or had at your venue?
Okay, the most fun, let me think. Okay. So I've had a few couples that go, instead of opting to have a first dance right after like their grand entrance, or like during the dinner reception portion. I've had couples lately that after their ceremony, as they exit out and guests are all outside, they begin their first dance with their, like I've seen some mariachi, I've seen some DJs, I've seen some live like violinists and things, all different types. It's usually the best with live music, I would say. But they'll have their first dance immediately following ceremony, which I think is pretty unique and interesting. And a lot of times that I've seen lately, especially at the venue, we have like a little courtyard outside. And so guests will all go outside and they kind of are like huddled around the couple. And it's like a very intimate moment where everyone's really paying attention to their first dance. As sometimes it gets kind of lost right after grand entrance and people are like, okay, we're ready to eat. And they're not as involved in the dance. But I think everyone kind of standing around and witnessing it makes for like a really, really just special, sweet moment that is new. It's something new I've seen.
Yeah, that's I can imagine that being sort of a really intimate setting because you have everybody's attention. Not that it's about having people's attention, but I can see the atmosphere that it would create with your friends and family really being there and kind of being a part of it almost, as opposed to just being on the sidelines. That's really cool. I have not seen that one yet.
Yeah, definitely. Especially capturing all of the parents' faces and expressions and everything as they're doing their first dance and kind of getting a different look on it. Because, when you're in a big room, it's hard to get everyone's emotions on camera. But in that moment, they're all right there. And so it's a little bit, little extra.
Yeah, I love that. That's kind of a beautiful, beautiful idea. Okay, so next question I have for you. Is there any advice you can offer for somebody that's just starting on their sort of journey in the wedding or event industry, whether that's photography, planning, stepping into venue management or a venue role? What advice would you have given your previous self or to somebody that's just starting out?
Oh my goodness. Okay. My best advice is, there is something called imposter syndrome, which is basically, have you heard that term before?
Oh, yes.
Imposter syndrome. Okay. So it's
I know it.
Basically, to others that don't know, it's a feeling you feel when you're seeing someone else's work and you're like, I'll never be that good. I don't even want to do this anymore. No. And luckily when I started social media, this is going to make me sound so old, but social media wasn't really like happening yet. So there was no other photographers to compare myself to in that sense. Like I was still having to go, business to business and hand out cards. So I wasn't having any type of comparison as much on social media. So it took me a lot longer to grow my business and then to eventually get the venue. Whereas now, there's so much ability to go online and look at all these huge Vogue weddings or these planners that are, styling these insane weddings that already have 20 years under their belt. So my biggest point of advice would be, do not compare yourself to what you see online. Look at things as an end goal of what you would like to create, whether that's you running a venue, opening your own venue, photography, video planning, whatever it may be, whatever avenue it is of the industry that you're interested in. Just do what you love and your clients will come. There's millions and millions of weddings all around the world every year, and you will book a few of them. It's just about letting your own personality shine through in what you're doing and not allowing the influence of social media and the, famous different vendors to kind of get under your skin of thinking that they're you feeling like you're inadequate compared to them because you might not have as many bookings or any of that. So really just focusing on your own talent and being proud of that and showcasing that rather than trying to compare yourself so heavily to other vendors.
Yeah, that's a beautiful sentiment. I think that's probably true of many, many industries. You never get started because you think you'll never make it to the top, or
Right.
or you don't have immediate success, so you get deterred. But yeah, I mean, you got to start somewhere, and if you
Right.
just lead into it and kind of trust in yourself, a lot of other people will give up. Which if you don't, that's kind of how you make it. I think to that select group, at the end of the line kind of thing. But yeah,
Right.
that's beautiful advice. Okay, so let's get to some of the sort of logistical stuff over at the Taylor Stone for anybody that might be interested in checking it out, or has been piqued by the idea of a micro wedding, which I think will appeal to a
Yeah.
lot of people. I've never heard of that, and I'm kind of excited to share that with people because a lot of the clients we get, we help to find other vendors and venues because we work with a lot of venues, as I'm sure you do, the same kind of network you were talking about.
Right.
So I'm excited to kind of put that idea into conversations that I have, because I can already think of many spaces where people are struggling to find venues and working with their budget and all that stuff. So that's going to be really cool. But let's talk about the venue a little bit more. So how is your current availability? How far in advance are you booked? What kind of flexibility do you have in terms of like guest count changes or things like that?
So we have very sporadic booking. It totally depends. We are booking into 2025 now. We have, I think, 2 or 3 more fall dates available for this year, but we do have some open availability for next year. We're not booking for 2026 just yet, just because you never know. We're waiting a little bit till into next year till we start booking for the following year. But definitely, yeah, it's very flexible schedule wise. But as far as I know, like some larger venues, since we are smaller, it is a lot easier for that flexibility. We have a creative meeting with our couples a month out and then a week out from wedding day, so that we are able to just nail down all details. Also, if you have coordination booked through us, we nail down your timeline. We reach out to all the vendors and all of that, so that the couples don't have any stress for that. But of course, I have some couples that, at their final week meeting, they're like, hey, our guest count went from 32 to 40, and it's totally fine. We have accommodations for that. It just kind of means we've got to sit down, rework the floor plan and things, but nothing we can't handle as long as it's not over capacity. But yeah, it's, especially on a smaller scale, I think it is, a little bit more of a relaxed clientele. So they are like, oh, well, 2 more people dropped off, and then they're kind of not too worried about
Sure.
it. So we're super flexible in that regard.
Cool. So I'm sure in that kind of similar veins that you have that flexibility, and obviously one of the main appeals of a micro wedding, I'm sure, is the cost, right? So can you give us kind of an average event size or cost at the Taylor Stone? I mean, what kind of budget differences are we talking here? For somebody that might be loving this idea of a micro wedding, what kind of cost and size do you see at your venue?
So our smallest collection is 5 hours, and that includes the space, tables, chairs, linen, sound system, and really the shell of the room. So you can bring in all of your own things. For a 5-hour rental, which is our smallest collection, that's $1,500, and then that's basically the shell of the space, tables, chairs, linens, all of that. And that's really for the couple that's like, hey, we don't need all the bells and whistles. We're coming in. We want the tables, chairs, linens, sound system. Like, we're just hanging out, having some catering. No big deal. And then we have a range, of course. You can, let's say you add on photo, the space for the full day, floral, can get crazy. So that's kind of hard to give a range for floral. But I would say the average wedding that includes floral, photo, the space, coordination, all of that is right around $3,500, $4,000.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's definitely, I can see the appeal right away for sure.
Right.
What about a deposit? How do you guys work with your deposit or your cancellations? What kind of policies do you guys have in place for that stuff?
So deposit wise, it's 50% due day of booking, and then 50% due day of wedding. So whatever you're including on our end, whether that's floral, venue, photo, anything in between that you've done rental wise through us, will be included in the initial contract, and then 50% of that is due the day that you book, and then the remainder isn't due until later, just in case you decide to add on extra florals or more time photo wise, or an extra shoot or any of the variables. That can all be tacked on later and isn't due until wedding day.
Got you. So what's the maximum capacity you guys have? I mean, I know micro is obviously small, but what's the max capacity that you guys have?
So seated is 45 guests, and that's at like maximum seated. And then with your vendors and things, you have to take into account. Sometimes people will say, oh, well, your max capacity is 50. We have 50 guests. And they're not including themselves or, a DJ or a bartender or their photo and video team or the caterer. So max capacity, 50 people can be in the room together. I try to always say have 45 or less guests. Our most popular seating, which is like the U shape, fits a max of 42. So I always try to explain that to guests, that if you're wanting kind of what you're seeing pictured to be completely transparent, only 42 people fit in that seating arrangement. And then if you want to have a certain amount of vendors and things, you have to take that into account as well. But 50 people max.
Okay, great. Well, you can find all of Mia and the Taylor Stone's info at thetaylorstone.com. Her Instagram is at thetaylorstone. Well, this has been awesome, Mia. Thank you so much. You guys make sure you go check out the Taylor Stone. It looks beautiful. Mia, I hope we can work together sometime in the future. So we'll stay in contact and all that good stuff. But other than that, this has been fantastic. And thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Eventful Endeavors, Secrets to Crafting the Perfect Celebration. We hope to have left you with some actionable ideas for your own event. If you like the show, please subscribe and definitely leave us a review. We read every comment. So until next time, happy planning and see you soon on Eventful Endeavors.